Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, well, I'm a climate scientist, and I know what you're already thinking. You're thinking, great, another pile of doom and gloom statistics, right? Am I right? I know I'm right. And it's true, none of us can escape the flood of headlines, record-breaking temperatures, hurricanes, wildfires, catastrophic floods. It's a daily occurrence now. And, of course, science tells us that we must dramatically reduce our carbon emissions in order to avoid the worst damages of climate change. But science also tells us that it's not too late. That if we work together over the next 1 to 2 decades, we can reverse global warming and deliver our children a planet that is on the mend instead of one that is careening towards a hot, unstable future. This is entirely possible, but we must get working today. So, every story has a beginning, and mine starts in the deep tropical Pacific, where I've been working for over 20 years diving on reefs for my research. It's really tough duty, right? And when I am diving, I am home. I know every single reef like the back of my hand. I marvel at the diversity of color and sizes of those corals, each of them performing a vital function for ocean health and, in turn, our health. And corals play a very, very important role in the global economy, providing food for billions of people around the planet. And they are, of course, very near and dear to my heart, but they are also a core part of my research. I use corals to peer back at the history of El Niño ocean temperature extremes over the last centuries and millennia. When we pull up these coral cores, which you can see me doing here, we're looking at a time capsule of ocean temperatures that helps us look at the history of these ocean temperature extremes and how they're changing with climate change. These El Niño events impact global temperature and precipitation patterns every other year or so. They are a very important part of the climate system. And our data, stretching back over the last centuries, tells us that, perhaps not surprisingly, these ocean temperature extremes are getting more frequent and more severe as ocean warms. So, in that way, we can think of corals as a very key eyewitness to climate change. Unfortunately, corals are also a victim to climate change. And leading up to the 2016 record-breaking El Niño event that some of you may have heard about, we had to face 10 straight months of very high ocean temperatures at our research site that exceeded the threshold for coral bleaching and coral death. When we finally returned back to that site in April 2016, we faced an otherworldly landscape like you see before you right here. When we jumped in the water and looked down at this vibrant reef that you previously saw, we saw a deathscape of coral structures coated over by red-brown algae wafting in the currents. This is what you see here. It's a ghost town. All the structures are still there, but 85% of the corals were killed during that ocean temperature extreme at my research site. And I knew, as a climate scientist, that the oceans are going to continue to warm and that this reef may never be the same. It was like a death in the family. It was something that would change me forever. And it's the beginning of the next page in my life. However, we can think about corals that are far away, out of sight, out of mind, and we can grieve for them, but climate change touches the Southeast in very hard-hitting ways that are coming up to our doorstep. We all have lived through news of the hurricanes that have lashed our coastlines and ravaged our economies. We deal with ocean heat extremes that threaten vulnerable populations, droughts and wildfires that are coming closer every single year. The Southeast, in fact, faces a pile-on of climate-related impacts, worse than any other region of the country. And yes, this is a crisis that is at our doorsteps and getting worse through time. So in 2016, the crisis that I witnessed touched very close to my heart. And I decided that after spending the first half of my professional life being part of the climate, identifying the climate problem, I would spend the next part of my professional life being part of the climate solutions. But where to start? The problem's so overwhelming. Well, I had no idea, just like you. So I got on my bike. And I started biking to work in 2017 every day. And yes, I biked here today, you're wondering. And yes, I biked here in this outfit today, okay? I'll get my gold star later for that, I'm sure. But joking aside, biking changed my life in ways I could have never predicted. It made me healthier. It made me happier. It helped me remember every day what I'm fighting for, what I care about. And most surprisingly, it helped me connect to a vast network of friends and biker family that every week we get together and we think about what we can do to advance pedestrian and bike infrastructure and alternative modes of transportation, mass transit, here in this great city of ours. So wow, I could have never predicted that. But it was only the first step of my process in trying to walk the walk and try to think about what a low-carbon future meant for me. And so these are all the things I've since tacked on to my low-carbon lifestyle, composting, all the usual suspects that you can see there, and some even not so usual suspects. The biggies on this one, planting trees and flying less. So I can pat myself on the back. I've reduced tens of thousands of pounds of heat-trapping carbon dioxide with these choices, right? But our climate change problem is not a tens of thousands of pounds of carbon problem. It's a millions and billions of pounds of carbon problem. And I am just one of billions of people that are contributing to this problem and are going to have to come together to fix it. So where does that leave us as individuals who have a chance to contribute to climate solutions but may not know where to start? I'm going to talk to you next about something called the Carbon Reduction Challenge. The Carbon Reduction Challenge recognizes that as individuals, we come together every day in groups of hundreds and thousands in our workplaces, in our kids' schools, in our universities, in our places of worship on the weekends. And that there are big levers we can reach for and tweak, and that is going to add up to millions and millions of pounds. Let me give you an example. This is the winning team from 2017 from SunTrust. It was not related to the fact that they're sponsoring this event, but it's a happy coincidence, I'm sure. This team identified a way to reduce carbon emissions by millions of pounds per year by changing the default setting on the corporate car rental system from intermediate size to economy size, saving the company money in the process. Tens of thousands of dollars per year, actually, in avoided costs. When they pitched this to the company, it was done the same day. It took less than a minute to alter the one line of code that changed this for the company forever. They made this a possibility. What do we learn from the hard work of these students who are working with these corporate and organizational partners across Atlanta? We learn, for one, that there's a false choice between serving your bottom line and helping be part of the climate solution at scale. This is what we learned. You could have your climate solutions cake and eat it too. The second thing we learn is that the easiest thing to do to contribute at scale is to find the biggest energy knob that you have access to and tweak it just the smallest amount. What about looking around in your workplaces? What about your thermostat settings? Are they smart and programmable? What about your lighting schedules? A few hours here and there, a few degrees here and there, that is what it's going to take to achieve the millions of pounds of carbon reductions. That is what we learn from the students who have been working with the Carbon Reduction Challenge over the last several years. Now, we certainly have a lot of low-hanging fruit available to us in the Southeast because we are fairly wasteful with our energy. So we get to reap the rewards of these energy efficiency projects that we do, and this is a great example of one of those. But we also have to recognize the opportunity to swing for the fences sometimes, and how important that is. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to the Candida building, the newest building on Georgia Tech's campus, in partnership with the Candida Foundation. Just opened. You can go tour it. It is the most sustainable building in the entire southeastern United States. Through its solar panels, it generates more energy than it consumes. It collects and treats all its own water. It even has high-tech compostable toilets that our president loves to brag about. And in every aspect of its design, it centers human health and equity as a core goal. It is beautiful on the inside and the outside. And it reminds us that our low-carbon future is not a world of sacrifice, but one of sublime beauty and inspiration and community. So, like it or not, this challenge is going down on our watch, right? Aren't we lucky? Right? All the generations that came before have led up to this point of decision right now. And all the generations that will come after us will look back on these decisions. The future generations that scientists like me spoke of in the past and said, if we don't think about addressing climate change, future generations are going to feel those impacts. It's us. It's us. And it's our children and our grandchildren, not the ones that might be born in the future, the ones that are already born, the ones that are here. Our decisions over the next 10 to 20 years will determine the trajectory of climate change for centuries to come. That's what science tells us. Let me say that again. Our choices over the next 10 to 20 years will shape the trajectory of climate change for centuries to come. We have an opportunity that is absolutely historic in nature. I hope I've convinced you that that low-carbon future that we are going to build is going to be beautiful and inspirational. It's going to have communities that are stronger and healthier. And I also hope I convinced you that you can be a key part of building that low-carbon future. Let's get to work.